Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's the top of the hour, and we'll let the other folks kind of stream in. Again, welcome. This is our 5th of 5 workshop series. My name is Greg Maddox. I'm a senior business and exit advisor for Cultivate Advisors. Like always, a little bit of housekeeping first. We have a few team members on as well. We've got David, Matt, Kyle, Christy, and Steve. So if you hear some other folks chiming in, maybe if you have questions that you put in the chat, you hear another voice, just know these are folks that are on the team. And for those of you who don't know, Cultivate Advisors, we are a business advisory firm that's staffed by current and former business owners, and we partner with founders and owners who have a strong desire to either scale, sell, or passively own their companies, but do it years ahead of schedule. And in the process of doing that, we create what we call business owner freedom today, but also maximum value when it's time to exit. And we do that through structured collaboration with the entire exit planning team of advisors. And so the purpose of this whole workshop series was to give you a breakdown exactly of how we accomplish this. And so just know that we've worked with thousands of business owners across North America. We've made the Inc. 5000 4 years in a row for fast growth ourselves. We've got hundreds of 5-star Google reviews, a world-class net promoter score. But the bottom line, as I always say, the work that we do to help our business owners grow is just not theory to us, guys. We actually eat our own cooking. Everything that we help our clients do, we are actually doing ourselves as we scale our own company to an eventual exit. So as I mentioned, we're in workshop 5. And before I jump into workshop 5, let's do a quick recap of what we covered in workshop number 4. So workshop number 4 was about growing your value without working around the clock. And we covered things like the entrepreneurial stages, because the work that you do in the different, as your business grows, it's going to vary depending on what stage you're in. So we walked you through the entrepreneurial stage framework. We also showed you how to quickly map out and prioritize the projects and the work that's most critical to the business success using our propeller methodology. We showed you also how to tie everything together so you could successfully implement and execute against your priorities using our simple 5-step planning process. And then we also talked about the secret to increasing your multiples to get it out of your head and onto something. And since most business owners actually struggle with this, very few actually do the work necessary to turn their business into a systems-driven asset that can actually not just run, but actually grow without them. So we've developed a solution to take that completely off your plate for clients that are working with us at Cultivate to ensure that your unique operating system actually gets built. And finally, we've talked about our freedom tracker framework that allows you to set up targets across business freedom, financial freedom, personal freedom, so you can track your progress and hold attention to results across all areas. And it's with the help of your total advisory team so that you can actually start living what we call your ultimate exit lifestyle, even if you never sell. So that was last week. We covered step 7. Today, we're covering steps 8, fund your freedom, and steps 9, cultivate your exit. So in fund your freedom and cultivate your exit, there's a handful of key things that we want to make sure that we're covering. There is a wealth concentration issue that most business owners have, but few really feel until it's too late. So we're going to talk about that. There's what I call the 50% problem that happens 100% of the time. I'm also going to talk about how you can 5x your net worth in 5 years and show you some real world examples of 6-figure savings that I have multiple clients doing versions of this. Then when it comes to cultivating your exit, we're going to talk a little bit about why is it that most exits fail and what are the different roles that you might have to play after you transition your company. And then also, what are the different ways that you might get paid, also called deal structure, and then when and how should you involve different team members, both before while you're growing, during while you're getting close to a potential transition, and then actually getting into the due diligence. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And as always, if you want to talk to somebody on the team, you have the opportunity to raise your hand and book a call at the end of this. I'm going to cover a couple cheat sheets. You're going to have the opportunity, as always, to raise your hand and get those emailed to you directly. So let's jump into it. So step 8 is fund your freedom. We're going to talk about how do you put millions of dollars into your retirement accounts without selling the business. Here's the first cheat sheet, guys. Remember, if this is too small to read, you can get a copy of this email to you. So 3 common struggles. Why is it that most owners really struggle to separate much wealth at all from their business while they're growing it? Well, number 1, I think most owners are just unaware of what's even possible. Number 2, their current advisors just aren't showing them what's possible. There's a couple reasons for that. And number three, the advisor team tends to operate in silos and it's very reactive. So even if one advisor has some good ideas, they're not necessarily talking to the other advisors required to pull it off. And so or the business owners left being the coder ring, the project manager between all of that. And that rarely happens. So then not much actually gets implemented. So what are the three simple things that we can do? We're going to break this down in a little more detail today, but at a high level, you could do what I call stack retirement plans. And that's a way to kind of reduce taxes and also maximize your tax deferred savings. I'm going to give you some real world examples there. But it's all under the guise of how do we separate wealth from the business? Cash is king. So the more cash that you could have separate from the business gives you more peace of mind today, but also more options tomorrow. And then the final thing is we should also be looking to create multiple income streams. So right now, most business owners, all their financial eggs are tied to their business. All their income mostly is generated from their operating business. Most of their wealth is tied up inside of that business. So how can we start solving for that and having, if we could separate a little bit of money and start investing in other things, work with a wealth manager, work with other people, if you want to invest in real estate, whatever it is, you should have more than one horse pulling the wagon. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today as well. So the first challenge that most business owners fail to see is what I call the wealth concentration issue. So if you think about this right now, and you can do this on the back of a napkin, what percentage of your wealth is tied to your company's value? Now, in the beginning, when you're first building something and getting it off the ground, it's probably negligible unless you purchased or inherited something that was already at a decent size. But over time, this becomes a bigger and a bigger issue. So let's put a picture to it. So let's use hypothetical Bob. At age 30, let's assume that he started this business from scratch. It's really not worth much, but the few bits of equipment that he purchased to kind of get the thing started. But like a lot of business owners, he worked for somebody else first. And let's say that he had $150,000 in his 401k. And so he has that money set up in a retirement fund and also has a house that has a couple $100,000 of equity in it. So if you look at this pie chart, you can see that the biggest thing that he has right now is his house. And most of us know that houses are not liquid. They don't always go up in value. You have to sell it to get your money. But right now, that's where most of his wealth is. And then also the big green swatch over there is his retirement fund, which is awesome. It looks like, hey, he's pretty liquid. Close to half, what is it, about 40% of his overall wealth is a liquid retirement fund. That's pretty cool. The business is that little red sliver. You can barely see it. But what happens over time as the business grows and everything else increases? Oftentimes we see this, we call it the Pac-Man chart. You see that big red swatch is the business, and it looks like a Pac-Man because it's gobbling up everything else. If you have a business that in this example is worth $4 million now, he's added a little bit more money to his retirement fund. He's got 400,000 in there, so he's added a little bit, and the primary residence has gone up. It's now worth a net value of about 600,000. So 5 million altogether, but 4.6 million of his wealth is illiquid, tied up in either his house or mostly in his business. And so why is it that we need to solve this problem? This is the 50% problem that happens 100% of the time. According to statistics, 50% of business owners are not going to leave their business on their terms or their timeline because of what's often referred to as the 5 Ds, which you can see right there on the slide. You have death, disability, divorce, disagreement, disruption. So death, disability, those are pretty obvious. Divorce, fairly obvious. Disagreement, that's with partners or any other stakeholder that could have an impact on your ability to run the business. Disruption comes in a lot of forms. It could be like COVID coming in and totally shutting down your business and making it really hard for you to get back up to where you were. It could be things like technology, like Uber coming in and totally disrupting the taxi cab business. And you're no longer worth anywhere near as much as you were prior to because of that change you had no control over. But here's the thing. No, business owners, we are eternal optimists. So we never think any of this is going to happen to us until it does. And we always think that we're going to have enough time to deal with this later until we don't. And the challenge is that the cost of inadequate planning, and I'm talking about tax, legal, wealth, as well as business planning, can be absolutely catastrophic if one of these things ends up happening and the timing doesn't work out for you. So thing you're always going to hear me harping on, make sure you have the right professionals on the team. So the right tax, legal, and wealth management professionals on the team, and then start working with them now to create a plan to address these problems. And by the time we're actually done today, my goal is to have you excited to actually reach out to your advisors to learn more about some of the strategies I'm going to share with you. So when it comes to concentration of wealth, if we know that's a problem that we need to solve, how do we quickly solve it? Well, a couple key things I want to point out. Your business is the biggest lever for income and wealth for you. So, as I said in workshop number 1, I want you to reframe your thinking about the possibilities from your business, that your business is a big wealth creation machine. Yes, you got to do great work. Yes, you got to treat people right. Yes, you have to make an impact. All that stuff is table stakes for being in business. Once you've done that, then let's also talk about how we can create wealth and freedom with your business, freedom of time as well as freedom of money. So the business planning is critical because your business is literally the goose that's laying the golden eggs that supports everything else. The challenge is when it's the only thing that's supporting the vast majority of everything else. But when we do that correctly, it allows you to actually fund a diversified financial plan separate from your business, working with the appropriate other professionals. And another way to think about it is just solve having all of your financial eggs tied up in the business basket. And when we do that the right way and reframe our thinking and create a business plan that's connected to our financial wealth, tax, legal plans, we can actually massively increase net worth, sometimes 2 to 5 times in as little as 2 to 5 years. I'm going to walk you through. For those of you who were on workshop number 1, I'm going to remind you about the Freedom Point Calculator case study that we did and use that as an example as we walk through this. So I'm going to go through these screenshots pretty quickly, guys, because we went through this before. If you want to have a deeper dive on this or slow down a bit, go back to workshop number 1, where I walked through this step by step in our software, and you see exactly how this stuff builds and how we use it with clients. If you want to know more specifically how your numbers might flow through this, then just reach out to us at the end of this workshop, and you'll have an opportunity to set up a call with one of our people. No cost, no obligation there. But today I'm going to go through it at a relatively quick pace because you have a couple other ways to get at the deeper dive if you want it. So remember, this case study was based on an actual client. I didn't share any of the details about her business or her person except for the numbers. So her desired income was $500,000, and she didn't have any other sources of income that were passive. And she was very conservative. So for her, in order to kick off 500,000, she wanted to use the 3% rule, which means that she would need to save $16.5 million in order to fund her life without her business. Right now, her business is funding that. And so the next step is, well, how much do you have saved? So she has $2 million saved, which is a pretty good step for most people. Some people might be done at 2 million, but for her, clearly that's not enough for the lifestyle that she wants and how conservative she is. So if you see her wealth gap here, is she still needs to save this much more or sell her business to fill this gap. And let's be true or be honest here. Most business owners are not going to 100% save their way to their freedom point. Their business is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. The problem is most business owners think they have to wait until the end when they actually sell their business to fill up the gap in their liquid wealth. I'm going to show you today how we could do that while you still own it. And the last thing we showed you was that in order for her to walk with 14.5 million after taxes, fees, debt payoff, etc., she would need to sell her business for a little over 23 million bucks. And if you remember in the story in workshop number 1, she looked at that number and she laughed because she thought there was no way in heck that she would be able to build her business from its current level to that level of value in the time frame that she was thinking, which was a 5-year time frame. But that's because, as I mentioned before, she didn't really understand what I call freedom or business owner math. She's focused on chasing and adding a dollar of revenue, adding a dollar of profit. So in order for her to get from where she is to 23 million in value, she was thinking about how much more revenue she would need. But when you start understanding that business owner math is about the multiples, and the more you can make the business less dependent on the owner and more systems and team driven, more process driven, the multiple goes up, and that's what accelerates the value while you also grow some revenue, grow some profit. So for her, Her business was doing about 9 million bucks, and this was an aberration. It was an off year for profit. It was about a million because all the supply chain stuff, et cetera, was had it kind of hunkered down a bit to 11%, which means that her business was worth somewhere between 2 and 6 million bucks when we need it to be worth 23 million. So the way that you get to that, we showed her a plan that said in 5 years, which was her timeline, get her profit margin back to where it has been in the past, which was 18, and then work on the people, process, and systems that move her out of the business and make it more systems, process, and people oriented, team oriented. We could get the multiple up a little bit. So we're looking at a $23 million value 5 years from now, but that's because largely we're moving the multiple up. And so the question is, she still has this monster gap that we need to fill. How can she do it? We look at what we did with her. Obviously, we talked about the business being the biggest lever, but if you just go down that fourth bullet point, her beginning value, if I just pick in the middle, and it was actually about 3.5 when we did the initial valuation, but let's say her, for easy math, that her beginning value was 4 million bucks. Her freedom value is 23 million, and we have a 5-year plan to do that at a growth rate in the low mid 20% per year, which she's been exceeding and was highly confident to continue doing, to do that in 5 years. So we could almost 5 to 6x her net worth in 5 years. But the problem here is that the vast majority of that is going to be all inside of her business unless we do some things different. So there's solving the freedom point is one thing, but having it be totally illiquid and tied up inside the business is another problem. And that's a concentration of wealth problem that we talked about solving. So how do we solve that? I'm going to share what I call some 6-figure saving strategies. And these are things that some of you might know some of these labels, some of you might not. Quick caveat, this is not tax, legal, or investment advice. But I'm going to share with you some information about these things that you might not have known, and then maybe open your eyes to some different possibilities. So there's a handful of different things out there between simple IRAs, SEP IRAs, 401ks, and then this other one, defined benefit plans, which is a label for a different grouping of types of plans that you could have access to if you're aware of it and if you qualify. And most successful small businesses can qualify for a version of it. But first, let's talk about what are the differences between these plans. So this is straight from the irs.gov. Simple IRAs, you can put 14,000 bucks a year into. If you're a little bit older, they have what's called a catch-up provision, so you can put a few grand more, or 17,000 if you're over 50. The idea there is to incentivize folks who have not been saving enough to be able to save a little bit more. And these are all things that are tax deductions that you could put into these various savings vehicles, working with your wealth manager. 401ks, if you have one of those, you could put in a little over 20 grand a year, or a little bit more if you're 50 or older, 26 grand a year. And then SEP IRAs is one that most people seem to know, and they think that this is where this is the top. This is as big as it gets, because that's a pretty big difference, right? $61,000 a year versus 20 or even 14. But remember our Freedom Point calculator example. She has to bridge a $14 million gap. How long is it going to take her to bridge that gap if she's saving at a clip of $14,000, $26,000, or even $61,000 a year, even with really good rates of return? The answer is she'll never reach it. There's no way that she can bridge that gap, but she could save some money. So how do you do it faster? So I'm going to talk to you about a category of savings vehicles for business owners at a high level today, just so you understand what's available and open your eyes to the possibilities. They're called defined benefit plans, also called cash balance plans. This is the legalese page. This is not, again, tax, legal, or investment advice. The information that I'm sharing comes from a third-party administrator dedicated to defined benefit services. They actually build and administer and maintain these types of plans for small businesses all across the country. Like all third-party administrators, they work in conjunction with the owner's other professional advisors, and the TPA, or third-party administrator, is the one who's responsible for actually building or designing the initial plan and then maintaining it to meet the IRS guidelines year after year. And then I'm going to share some very specific examples And this is the source document. I got it from a white paper that this third-party administrator published called Cash Balance Plan for Small Businesses. You can see a link there. You know, if you watch the replay, you can grab that link in the future. But a big takeaway here, I'm not trying to educate you as if you were a financial advisor or a tax professional. I'm talking to you as if you're a business owner. Don't try to think that you have to understand the inner workings of all of this. I'm at a high level, just want you to understand some case studies and how there are certain types of strategies and plans available that could help you accelerate solving that concentration of wealth problem, so that we're in step 8 right now, which is called Fund Your Freedom, which is 2 parts: building the business to a point where the business is worth more and kicking off more cash flow, and then what do we do with that cash flow to help you create more liquidity, more income producing assets, more liquid assets that are separate from your business, so we have more than one horse pulling the wagon. So let's start with a quick quote from Forbes. So they're talking specifically about defined benefit plans here, but you can see what they say. Hey, choosing the right retirement plan for your small business can be a $2 million decision. And if you're highly compensated and your financial goals include saving as much as you can for retirement, then a cash balance / 401k plan combo might be the right solution for you. I use the term called stacking retirement plans. These are all different types of retirement plans: 401k, cash balance, etc., profit sharing. And so when you start stacking them up, you can start getting different results than folks who you'll just do it the traditional way. So why are these gaining a lot of favor with business owners, and especially small business owners? Well, lots of reasons. Significant tax deductions for high income business owners. I have multiple clients putting multiple 6 figures away into plans like this right now. That means those multiple 6 figures are a tax deduction for that year's income. And then they put that money away into their own retirement, which they get to invest how they want with their wealth manager who set it up. So also the high contribution limits, the limits are much higher. So we saw that the SEP had the largest contribution limit. You could put up to 61,000 bucks away, which is a lot of money, but that's a lot less than multiple 6 figures. So for people who are older and trying to play catch up, then to be able to go higher than that sometimes becomes really, really important. Also, flexibility, because as we know, small businesses, it ebbs, it flows. So the ability to put a structure in place that fits a variety of business situations and gives you a variety of investment options. Again, you work with your investment professional on all that. And this is something that the IRS has already seen a ton of, has approved. And so there's lots of pre-approved plan documents, et cetera, that keep the administration very streamlined and cost effective. And these are retirement plans. So just like your 401k, just like an IRA, these things are protected in the event of a lawsuit or bankruptcy. People can't take your retirement. And so the funds that go into this are also protected, which is a bonus. So high level, who's best suited? Generally speaking, if you look at the bullet points in the middle, any business owner who has a successful business that wants to make bigger contributions than are allowed by the traditional plans. Generally speaking, if you're a little bit older, 35 plus, you're making a good amount of money. And if you expect to have that cash flow for the next 3 to 5 years. And also if you're willing to make some limited contributions for other employees. So the reason you could put a whole bunch in to your own retirement is because the IRS, the tax code, allows you to do that when you also sprinkle some of that across your different employees. And that's something that the third-party administrator and your wealth manager all work out. So now that we have the high level, let's actually look into some actual real-world examples and put some numbers to this to give you a little more idea. So this is a great example. This is, as you can read, a married business owner with 3 employees. So a small company, right? You can see that Phil and Mary are married. Phil has a big salary, Mary a smaller salary, and then they have 3 employees that range from 20 grand a year to almost $40,000 a year, and ages range from 24 to almost 60. The big thing I want you to see here is on the right-hand column is the total annual contribution. So you can see that Phil is putting away almost over 286,000 bucks for his own retirement. Mary's got another 38,000, and then the balance is going towards the other 3 employees. But look at that. the owners are going to receive 98% of the total contribution. All of that contribution is tax deductible to their business. But this is a way for them in their mid-late 50s to start playing catch up and socking a whole bunch of money away in a relatively short period of time. You can see they were looking for a 7-year game plan. Also, because it's top line tax deduction, you could see based on these assumed tax rates, that's still $120,000+ tax savings in the year that they did this. So I've got clients who are putting as much as $400,000 a year into plans like this, and in their tax situation, that's 6 figures of tax savings as well. Here's another example. This is a family business. This is one, it happens to be in this example, it's a family farm that's owned by a couple that's in their early 60s. They pay themselves well. They each get a $216,000 a year salary. They have 2 adult kids in their mid 30s that they pay $180K a year to, and 1 non-family employee who's young and makes about $40K. When there's a family business, and I have a client that fits this bill, the chances of the kids to be able to pay mom and dad to buy the business outright at some point when mom and dad are ready to retire is usually not there. The kids are not, unless they inherited a bunch of wealth and they could write mom and dad a check, but the chances are that the wealth was created by mom and dad in this business. So when mom and dad are ready to retire, how do I pay them for this business? And you can see what they're doing here in the solution. They're putting away over $673,000. Oops, go back up one. For mom and dad alone, another 60 grand just about for the 2 sons, and 3 grand for the employee. So a total contribution over 700,000. Basically 100% of it is going towards the family, but the lion's share of that, 673,000, is going towards mom and dad. Well, why? So as the parents gradually turn their business over to their kids, this became a tax efficient funding strategy for them to stuff their retirement account full of money, which makes it less burdensome on the kids to have to either write big checks or to fund out of cash flow large amounts to take care of mom and dad when they do officially retire at some point in the future. So this is a great way to kind of take care of, it's like a Swiss Army knife, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And you can see there, huge estimated tax savings. Another example, if you have business partners with no employees. This is an interesting one. So this happens to be a professional services firm. So it's a law firm. You have 4 partners that vary in age. Their comp varies, but their life situations vary as well. And so one of the things that why small business owners like these types of plans is there's lots of flexibility. So you could see that Dana wants to just save a flat 25% of her income, which is 72 grand. But Michael's got a different scenario. He just wants to take $170,000 a year and save it. Abby, who makes a lot less, 183,000 versus over 300, doesn't need her cash flow. She has other resources. So she's putting well over 50% of her total income into the savings. But Kate, who still makes, almost as much as the top earners, she has a different scenario. She's got a new family. And so she's probably socking more of that away towards kids and college and upsizing the home, et cetera. So she's only putting 35 grand away. So the flexibility allows all these partners to do what they need to do for themselves individually and not have to do it all exactly the same because they're older, different life circumstances, or younger, and that allows them each to kind of do what they need to do. So it's a great way to work with your tax, legal, wealth management professionals and design something to actually help you solve your wealth concentration problem while we're growing the value of the business, while we're increasing multiples, increasing revenue, increasing profit, so that we can, your business can be the goose that's laying the golden eggs, and we're creating liquid resources separate from the business. And because these things are all top line tax deductions, you can see that there's a significant amount of tax savings when they do this. Last example, just to give you a variety, and don't worry about the industries. I just want you to see that different business setups, partners with no employees. Here's a medical practice with up to 10 employees. We looked at family-owned business. So this one, it's a medical practice with a handful of employees. The doctor's the main earner. Everybody else is in support role. And so you could see that the doctor's putting the vast majority of the deduction goes to their retirement, and the rest of it gets sprinkled across the employees. So big tax savings, but a big percentage of the overall contribution, which is all tax deductible to the business, the vast majority of that contribution goes as a benefit to the business owner. So you see, when I said, guys, the common struggles that people have when it comes to funding your freedom, I said that most people are unaware that this is even possible. And I don't know if everybody on this call already knew about this. And this is one of many different options that's out there. Their current advisors aren't showing them or talking about it, or the advisor team is just operating in silos and it's very reactive. And so when I said stack retirement plans, that's what I meant, that you had to take a 401k, profit share, cash balance plan, et cetera, like you saw in those examples, which allows you to separate wealth from the business, give you more peace of mind now, more options later, but also gives you the opportunity to start creating multiple income streams that aren't tied directly to your business. So that's step 8, fund your freedom. Let's pivot into step 9. Cultivate your exit. And this is about maximizing your exit results without giving up choice and control. So here, why is it that most people don't seem to be prepared for this? Well, number one, I think that the challenge is that the business is either not ready or the personal finances are just not set up correctly so that the business owner can truly exit, or he has something that could be sellable to somebody else. Oftentimes, our personal identity is so fused to our business ownership that it's hard for us to let go and imagine ourselves doing anything differently than running our business day to day. And then the last one is that lots of owners are just, because of their lack of planning along the way, the lack of separating liquid wealth, the challenge with the concentration of wealth is all tied up in their business. They're very reluctant to prepare for less than an all cash offer. Spoiler alert, those are available, but they don't always tend to be the highest offer you could get, assuming your business is sellable. So how do we work through that? Well, number one, you need to plan early to be comfortable to maximize all the different options that you could potentially entertain. You want to have the ability to entertain as many as possible. That could be your family, selling to the managers, a third party, et cetera, because there's just no guarantee that your preferred choice is actually going to happen. So we don't want to put all our eggs in that one basket either. Step 2 is there's a lot of different roles that you might have to play post exit, and you need to prepare mentally and financially for all of those so that you could have more options. So you might have to be the lender if you're selling to your managers or to your kids. You might have to be the bank for them. You might stick around as a consultant to help in the transition. You might be an executive who comes on to the acquiring company and has an official role there for a while. You just might be an advisor. There's lots of different ways, and that could have different timelines attached to it. But the more flexible you are to be comfortable with a variety of options, the more buyers you can attract, and the more buyers you attract, the more of a bidding war that comes, and the more choices you have to get a higher and best combination of deal terms. Which leads us to step 3, which is you need to maximize your deal structure options, aka deal terms. So how do you get paid? Is it all cash at closing? Is it an earn out based on hitting certain targets over time? Is it you're selling a portion of the company today and maintaining a portion of it and going to grow with the new management team, the new ownership team, and sell it again at a higher dollar amount? That's called a recap in the future. Just know that the biggest payouts are not typically all cash offers. So the more you could be prepared and comfortable with mentally, financially, and otherwise, multiple different ways of doing this, the better off you'll be. So the 2 big reasons exits fail. I alluded to this on the cheat sheet. Number 1, the business is not ready, or number 2, the owner is not ready. And why do you think that that is? Now, we talked a lot about the lack of planning that many business owners do. So there's lots of different ways that they might not be ready. But the stats tell us that the vast majority of businesses fail to reach their 10th birthday. Of the remaining 30% of founders who actually survive that first decade, most of them are just going to shut down their business when it's time to leave. So they're not going to reap any type of reward or ROI on all of those years of hard work and sacrifice. And of those rare owners who do actually build something worth selling, still 1 in 4 of that little sliver go through a lengthy sales process just to figure out that their business isn't as attractive to the buyer as they thought, and the deal falls apart before closing. And there's lots of different reasons why. I'm going to give you just a handful tonight. But there could be a gap in the value. This is a common one, guys. Most business owners who are not doing this planning ahead of time, clients who work with us, we're dealing with this years ahead of schedule. But most business owners have an incorrect view of the value of their business, and they think it's worth a lot more than it actually is to a third party. And so there's usually a gap there that doesn't get resolved, and people take it personally and they end up fighting and leaving the table for it. There could be some type of an unreasonable demand from either side. There could be no market for the business. Think about Uber coming in and killing the taxi cab companies. How many people are going out and buying taxi cab companies these days? You could make accidentally or on purpose a seller misrepresentation that the other side uses to kill the deal. There could be lack of capital to finance, like my client, who we were 2 weeks away from closing right before COVID, and COVID hit and the money froze. And she went from a $2 million closing to a no deal, and then 2 years later sold it for 800,000. Lack of capital. Economic uncertainty tied exactly to that. That's why the capital dried up. They didn't know how COVID was going to affect the economy and how long it was going to take. There's lots of reasons why there's economic uncertainty that could affect someone's willingness to come to the table and pay you money. And it could just be your business doesn't have sufficient cash flow. It could be paying you a decent lifestyle, but for someone else to come in and either use debt to finance the purchase of your business, or they're using their own cash, there's not enough cash flow to give them enough ROI to pay themselves back at the appropriate level. So you got to think about that as well. And we go through that analysis with our clients on the front end, so they know exactly where they stand on that. So some key questions to answer before you exit. It's a pretty simple way of thinking about it, guys. What do I need to exit? What is my business worth? When will I get paid? How much will I keep? Is it enough? And then what will I do next, and will I be happy? Two different ways of thinking about those questions is, one is transactional. Is it even possible now? So is my business sellable? Will I walk away with enough? Our Freedom Point calculator answers a lot of this ahead of time. But there's an emotional aspect too. Like, am I really ready? Am I ready to give up control? Am I ready to no longer be Mr. or Mrs. Big, in the business and in the community? Am I excited about my new reality, about whatever's next for me? Am I clear about how I'm going to spend, my abundance of time and money? Because chances are, if you're exiting, you're going to have more time and more money than you've ever had at the same time in your life. Those are all questions that need to be answered. But how do we make sure that when we do create an exit, we don't regret it later? 4 general areas. You need to have a very clear vision of what you want in the future. Bring that to the present and create a business that helps you get that now, not just at exit. You need to plan for and be comfortable with lots of different options on how you might structure the sale. We talked about that, by who you might sell it to and how you might receive the cash. And if you can build a life and identity separate from your business while you still own it, years ahead of thinking about selling it or transitioning in some way, you could have more personal detachment and not have that problem. And then there's the team involvement of, as you get closer, who on my team do I involve? When do I tell people? How do I take care of them, et cetera? So when it comes to your vision of the future, I want to talk a little bit about what I call push factors and pull factors. What do you guys think those mean? And you can these are, rhetorical questions, because you can't chime in, but one is something that you're running from, the other is something that you're running to. And when I talk to business owners all the time, it's stressful owning a business. Even when things are going great, you're putting out fires and there's lots of things that you have to deal with. So it's very easy for us to identify lots of things that are pushing us out or things that we want to run away from. The challenge is if all we have are things that are kind of pushing us out, and there's not much else in the business that's attractive, the chance of someone coming and writing you a big check in the future to save you from all of those problems, probably not going to happen. But different things that could be considered push factors could be that you have just your own health or family health of a loved one. You could get burnt out. There could be a family crisis. I got clients who are concerned about, they really like a certain level of building and growing, but once things start going too smoothly, they can get bored. So there's a level at which they need to shift up their game. It could just be that it's too much stress, or it's taking up too much of your time. It could be that you're aging out and it's just time to retire. You could have an idea that the market has peaked for your business, and you think, if I don't do it now, I might be in trouble if I wait another 3 or 5 years or longer to get out. Or you get to the end and say, oh my God, I kept all of my eggs in all my financial eggs in the basket of the business. I need to diversify my wealth. But now it's like an emergency because I need that money. I need it liquid right now. And whether we could have been doing stuff along the way. So it could be you just want to cash out. Pull factors, on the other hand, are just things that you're excited about moving towards. These are generic and high level, but just give you an idea. You could be, wanting to get more involved in your community. I have lots of clients who are still young and hungry, and they're going through an exit right now just to build and fund the next thing because they're going to start a new business. It could be that you've given a lot of your time and attention to your business, and now you think, I need some me time, focus on my health. Or spending time with family, or getting back to hobbies and things that you used to spend more time in the past, writing a book, traveling, etc. There's only so much, golfing or traveling, etc., that you can do, whatever that is for you. There has to be something that you do where you feel like you're creating value in the world, however you define that, so that you feel like you're a contributor still, even if you don't want to be operating a business. Those are the things that are pull factors that will really motivate you. And I would say, let's start building that into how you live your day-to-day life while you're still owning and growing this company, not just waiting to the end. So generally speaking, my thesis is that pull factors are greater than push factors. And you could think to yourself, do you agree or disagree? Here's why I think that. If you remove push factors, generally speaking, that's going to make your company more valuable. But if we're adding pull factors into our lives, that's usually going to make our life more valuable. And so this is an idea about success by addition and not subtraction. What do I mean by that? That it's easier to add a positive factor, aka pull factor, or habit into your life than it is trying to eliminate a negative one. So if I focus on focus on my diet and exercising, it'll naturally lead to weight loss versus just trying to yo-yo diet or just focusing on losing weight. So that's a simple example. But adding pull factors into your life actually forces you to create the business to accommodate what you really want. To me, that's a key factor. You can achieve growth of the business to your freedom point and the timeline you want. You could have reinvestment into the business, and you could still be building it in a way that allows you to have the life that you want. I'm not saying you don't have to work hard. I'm not saying that you're not going to put in some hours, but we don't have to let the tail wag the dog. You can actually force yourself to make better decisions about the way that you build the business, the way that you empower your team, the way that you add systems, so that you could have both time and money from your business, not just money that you grind for by putting in the hours. When it comes to being, planned for and flexible with the different ways that you could structure the deal, I'm going to give you some simple examples there. There are a lot of different ways that you could sell or transition your business. You need to know your financial freedom number. For us, that's the Freedom Point Calculator. We went through that a couple times. Workshop number 1, I did another review of it today. If you want us to walk you through your numbers, raise your hand at the end of this and we'll do that for you. But you also need to understand what you might have to do post-exit, like what your role might be. And the more flexibility you can have around all that stuff, the more leverage you'll have to get into more of a bidding war, have more options to get not just the number that you want, but also the deal terms. You probably want someone who's going to buy your company, who's going to treat your employees well, who's going to live on the legacy about your business that you want, not just someone who gives you top dollar. So when I say flexible structuring, what do I mean? The different exit options. So just put into lay people's terms, right? You could sell all of it, you could sell some of it, you could keep it but leave, you could do what I call the circle of life, aka family legacy. You could do a management buyout, which is a business legacy, or you could do the boots first exit. So where you work until you die, or you just walk away and you liquidate and don't really get much money. So selling all of it is the thing most people think of when they think about exit. Oh yeah, somebody comes in, buys the whole thing, gives me a big fat check, all cash at closing. That does happen, but it's not always all cash at closing. But you could sell all of it to a third party and still have some post-exit involvement. Maybe it's doing an earnout, maybe it's doing some consulting for transition, etc. You could sell some of it. That's usually where you're getting involved with private equity or employee stock ownership plans, or not uncommon in management buyouts, that they want to buy a piece of it from you and then learn to become owners while you're still there, and then eventually buy the rest of it out from you over time. The keep but leave. We have several clients doing this at Cultivate. We call this exiting operationally. This is where you don't give up any equity. You just level up your team so that a leadership team can run it without you or with as little of you as you want. Got a client who has been planning for this for almost 2 years. Starting next year, he's going to get buy a bus with his wife, and they're going to take a 1-year sabbatical. He's going to work about 15 to 20 hours a week from the road, though, which is new for him, and only 15 to 20 hours a week is new for him. He's normally been working full time, getting prepared for this. So, but that gives him a taste of how he can take some of his time and some of his money and go do something else. It also forces the team to level up in his absence and step up and start thinking more like owners and becoming better leaders inside of the business. Circle of life, a lot of family businesses, not all the kids don't necessarily want to get into mom and dad's business, but some do. And so you could transition to the kids or you can transition to the managers. So lots of different ways that you could choose to transition your business over time. And there's pros and cons of all of it. We don't have time tonight to go through this exercise, but I would encourage you, if you're watching this on the replay or if you're listening to it live, go back to the replay and come to this portion and take out a piece of paper and do 3 columns. First column is the exit option. Sell all of it, sell some of it, keep it, leave. The second column is the pros. The third column is the cons. The goal of this exercise is for you to honestly put pros and cons of each for you. And then over time, try to add more pros. Try to get creative about what would it take for me to put more in the plus column for a particular option than in the minus column. This is when you have plenty of time where it's not critical, you could start creatively thinking. If you're working with us, talk to us about it, Cultivate. We could help you think this through about how we could build the business, how you might work more with your wealth manager and your tax professionals to give you more flexibility and peace of mind to be able to accept one of these other types of options. Because the goal is to have as many options as possible. Because you don't know, again, 50% of people are going to leave their business not on their terms or timeline. Remember those 5 Ds. So the goal is to just be as ready as possible. What do you want to call that? Exit ready, or just good strategic planning, or prepared, however you want to put it. The goal is to have as many options as possible. So I would encourage you to come back and go through this exercise. You can read, we're giving you some cheat sheet here on different pros and cons of each one. I'm not going to go through those tonight. When it comes to structuring, if you think about, what do I need? So what would it take to replace my income and perks so I can live the life I want? This is all Freedom Point Calculator stuff, guys. We could show you this very quickly. What is my business worth? Again, in the Freedom Point Calculator, we could do some back of the napkin. But if you actually engage with us, we can actually do a deeper dive and really help you understand what your business is worth today and what it could be worth if we did some work on it. The third part is, well, when do I expect to get paid? This depends on how you might be preparing for a deal. You can get it all at closing, spread out over time, some combination. Here's a key one too that most people don't think about. How much do I actually get to keep? You got to pay Uncle Sam. You have to pay fees to the professionals who help you go through selling your business or transitioning your business. You're going to have debts in the business that need to get paid off. All that stuff comes off the top of whatever it is you're getting paid. So after you do the math, how much do I get to keep? The last question is, well, is that enough? When I take what I get to keep and add it to what I've already got, can I fund my exit lifestyle, however I define that? And we could help you think that through, right away, right now. And then depending on what the answer is, we can help you create a plan, working not just with us growing the business, but also with the right, tax professional, the right wealth management professional to start connecting the dots in these areas so that you could have a good answer in each one of these. So what are those different roles that you might have to play post-exit? Well, you might be the lender. Very common if you've got kids or employees that are buying you out. You basically are going to be the bank. You'll accept some type of payment from them monthly, quarterly, annually, over time to get paid. But then you are very tied to how well that business performs. If you are requiring, if you don't already have a lot of money liquid or other income producing assets separate from the business, and a huge percentage of your, net worth is tied up inside of this business and you're receiving it in little monthly payments, mentally, you probably won't really ever exit. You'll be so worried about the business. Are they going to be able to make my payment next month, next quarter? So we want to solve for that years ahead of time. Earnout means that you sell your business and you get a chunk of it at closing, and then the rest of it is tied to the business hitting certain metrics over a defined period of time. And sometimes those metrics are doable, sometimes they're not. That's when you need to be working with the right professionals to help you negotiate that correctly so you can get the maximum payment. You might have to be a consultant just to, at a fixed rate, it's X dollars a day, X dollars an hour, X dollars a month, that you're going to stick around and just kind of help them through a transition. Or you might sell a piece of the business, like maybe 80%, and maintain 20%, but work with the private equity firm to grow the business much larger with their capital, with their connections, their expertise, to sell the company again your second bite at the apple, where your 20% is now worth way more at that second bite than it was when you sold the 80. So you make more money. Or you can do none of the above and say, I just want all cash at close. So that's an option. It's just not always the highest option as far as total dollar amount goes. So the last thing I want to talk about is personal attachment. Your life outside an identity separate from the business. So this one's fairly simple. The key to getting yourself ready is just work on expanding the different things that you do separate from your business while you're still running the business. That means that, in my framework, I have business freedom, financial freedom, and personal freedom. Personal freedom is about you putting the oxygen mask on yourself. And we talked about this with the Freedom Tracker framework in the last workshop. So go back to that if you want more details. But it's hard work being an entrepreneur. And as your business grows, it doesn't get easier. You actually have to get stronger and to become a better leader, a better entrepreneur, a better CEO. And you can't do that by burning the candle at both ends all the time. So at some point, you're going to have to put that oxygen mask on yourself, have some time away for you to rest, recharge, and also to prove that the business can operate without you. And so we have some tools that we use. You can see there in the bullet points: vision, 5 keys, who I am. Just know that you have to have a vision of what you want in the future. At the very least, get it captured, whether it's on paper, whether you speak it into a video or into an audio recording. Refine it over time, revisit it regularly, and share it with your important other advisors and the other people that are important in your life, so that it's top of mind, so you can build a business that allows you to become that person that you want. And you don't necessarily go from 0 to 100 overnight, but you can go with purpose from wherever you are into the type of lifestyle that you want while you're still scaling your business. Last thing I want to talk about is the team involvement. So when you think about employee considerations, most of our clients don't come to us for the transaction. They come to us years ahead of schedule. So I'm only going to spend a little bit of time on this. This is something that we would deal with, as we got closer. But you need to think about, do you have a plan for thanking your employees that helped you get there? Do you have a plan for how you want to tell them, about your decision to exit? There's no right or wrong here, by the way, guys. It's totally, unique to every situation. Do you have a plan for how you'll proceed if you feel that the buyer is going to, either not treat your people well or let your people go? For some people, that's a deal killer. You're not even going to, want to sell it to them. For other folks, it might be okay, and you just have to work through that in a way that makes you happy. What about which employees, if any, you involve in helping the business get ready? Now, there are some that will have to be involved, in due diligence. It's super time consuming once you get there. But there's a whole team. Exit planning, as I've always said, guys, it's a team sport. And exit planning doesn't mean getting you and your money out of the business at some point in the future. It just means building a business that gives you what you want starting right now. In order to do that, we have to begin with the end in mind, know what that vision is of where we want to go, and then we have to work with the right team of professionals. There's going to be a core group, I think a business advisor, somebody like a Cultivate, who could help you really move the needle in your business, accelerate not just growing revenue and profit, but maximizing your multiples so that your value accelerates to your freedom point as quickly as possible. You're going to need a wealth manager who understands business owner, strategies like we talked about today. You need a tax advisor, a tax attorney who understands business owner strategies from asset protection, tax reduction, wealth creation through the business, like we talked about in this workshop and a couple workshops ago. When you get close to actually, doing due diligence, then your CFO is going to be the one who's providing all the historical financials. Whoever's in charge of sales and marketing is going to put together projections. Your CPA is going to handle all the tax stuff. You have to hire an M&A professional, broker / investment banker to actually run a sales process for you and sell your business. You're going to need an M&A attorney to actually handle all the paperwork and the legal stuff so that you actually get what you agreed to. And your financial advisor is going to make sure that the money afterwards is managed the way you want it managed over time. So there's a big team. Certain people kind of orbit or come in and come out of your orbit over time as you need them, but that core group of business advisory, wealth management, and tax planning are like the big three that are more involved consistently along the way. So let's give a quick recap here, guys. We talked about step 8, growing your value. And inside of that, we talked about the wealth concentration issue and how most business owners have so much of their net worth tied up inside their business, along with so much of their personal income tied to their operating business, and why that's a problem. We talked about the 50% problem, that 50% of business owners are going to leave their business, but not on their terms or timeline because of the 5 Ds, death, disability, divorce, disagreement, and disruption. We talked about how your business is your single largest wealth creation tool that you have at your fingertips if you leverage it correctly. And if we do that, we can 5x your net worth, in 5 years, 2 to 5x in as little as 2 to 5 years. And then because most business owners are just so illiquid when it comes to their overall net worth is inside the business and not in liquid savings separate from the business. So we opened your eyes and hopefully shared you some things that help you see the possibilities of 6-figure savings examples. And then on the Fund Your Freedom, or Cultivate Your Exit, we talked about why most exits fail, the different roles that you might have to play post-exit, whether you're the lender, consultant, etc. We talked about deal structure and the different ways that you might get paid, and then also a little bit about team involvement. And like always, guys, if you would like to have a conversation with one of our people, you could text Freedom Point 123 to 312-847-3880. Again, it's not case sensitive, but it has to be spelled correctly with no spaces, Freedom Point 123. Or if you just want the cheat sheets, text cheat sheet 123 to 312-847-3880. Again, not case sensitive, but needs to be spelled correctly and no spaces. We'll hang out for a minute. If anybody has questions, happy to answer them. But if not, the recordings will be available next day or two, and I encourage you guys to go back to them and dig into some of the workshop material that we laid out.